We'll begin with the back panel. So for the back panel, well, for this tutorial, I'll be working a sample, and that's only because I've already completed my back panel. It was rather long and it would take me very long to get this on camera. So you form a slip knot, then chain a length of chains. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Now you'll continue on with a length of chains, and this length of chains is actually the length of the cardigan that you're looking to make. So how do you get? You'll chain your length of chains, and then you'll hold the top edge of this length at your shoulder, and so it will be running lengthwise down your body. And standing in front of a mirror, you'll see if that's the length you're looking for. And I always choose to stand in front of a mirror when doing that, because I just find it so deceptive when I hold the chain on my shoulder and I look down, and somehow I never get the correct length that I'm looking to make my cardigan. So you'll do that. You'll chain that whole length of chains. Obviously yours is going to be a lot longer than mine. You'll see for my actual cardigan, it's a lot longer. Now once you've got your chain at the correct length that you're looking to make your cardigan, you will count the number of chains that you have. In my case, I've chained 28. Yes, like I said, it's short, but it's only a swatch. You'll have a much longer chain. It's 28 for me. Now I need to get that entire chain in multiples of 8 plus 7 in order to work the stitch pattern. So you'll count the number of chains that you have and make certain that it's in multiples of 8 plus 7. Like I said, I've got 28 chains, and I know that 24 is a multiple of 8. So then I have 4 chains remaining. So in order to make it 8 plus 7, it will be those 4 chains, and I need to add on another 3 chains to get it to a multiple of 8 plus 7. 1, 2, 3. Now for those of you that don't understand what I mean, you're looking for it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's with that, those 8 chains, I'm able to complete a stitch pattern. Then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, another stitch pattern. And by that I mean a polka dot. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, another stitch pattern. And then once I've got it in multiples of 8, I need a further 7 for my turning chains and for the stitches in between. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So that's what I'm looking for. So you'll do that for your chain, get it in multiples of 8 plus 7. Now for the back panel, round 1. Into the 4th chain from the hook, double crochet. So 1, here we have 1, 2, 3, 4. Into that 4th chain, we'll double crochet, but only this time we're working at the back of the chain. And if you look here, you'll see those little bumps that's formed. We'll work into those little bumps. So to work a double crochet, it's yarn over, insert the hook into that little bump at the back of the chain, pull up a loop, yarn over, go through 2 loops on the hook, yarn over, go through 2 loops on the hook. And you'll continue on with double crochets into those little bumps at the back of the chain to the end of the round. I've completed round 1 working those double crochets into the little bumps at the back of the chain. Round 2, chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and turn. Here you work double crochets all across into all stitches. continue to the end of the round. Now I've already gone ahead and cut off these lengths of yarn, and I'm hoping that you've watched the first part of the series, part 1, introduction to my polka dot series, where I explain everything that you need to make these patterns, and I explain in detail the polka dot pattern. Round 3, chain 3. Now this chain 3 counts as our first stitch, in this case our double crochet. Then into the next 4 stitches work 4 double crochets. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4. But when I come to my 4th stitch, I'll leave that unfinished. So by leaving it unfinished, I have 2 loops on the hook. Now I'll bring in my change of color. So here it is, and I'll form a little loop, and I'll bring it in to complete that last double crochet. And then keeping my tail ends at the back, into the next 3 stitches, I'll work 3 double crochets with this change of color. So that's 1, 2, 3, and for my last stitch, again, I'll leave it unfinished. There's 2 loops on the hook, and I'll go back, pushing aside this tail end of that first color. I'll be using that for round 2 and round 3, so I'll just keep it aside right at the back, and I'll bring in my original color, and I'll pull it through to complete the stitch. Into the next 5 stitches, I'll work 5 double crochets with my original color. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'll leave the last stitch unfinished, and I'll pick up my next change of color. Here it goes. I'll form that little loop, thread it through, and complete the stitch. Then all my tail ends are at the back, and I'll work 3 double crochets into the next 3 stitches with this change of color. I'll leave the last stitch unfinished, go back, pick up my original color, thread it through, and I'll work 5 double crochets into the next 5 stitches. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. I'll leave that stitch unfinished, and I'll pick up my next change of color. Here goes, form that loop, complete the stitch, and I'll work 3 double crochets into the next 3 stitches with this change of color. 1, 2, 3. I'll leave the last stitch unfinished, go back, pick up on my original color, bring it through, and into the next 5 stitches I'll work 5 double crochets. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So you are definitely going to have many more of these patterns throughout, and for each of them you'll change your color or however you want it. Maybe you just want to remain with a single color throughout your polka dots. That's fine, but remember, that's the stitch pattern. It's 5 double crochets with the original color and 3 double crochets with your change of color, and you'll continue to the end of the round, ending with 5 double crochets in the original color. Round 4, chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and turn. Now you'll see the back really looks crazy with all these ends of yarn, but that's okay, we're going to use it up. Into the next 3 stitches, work 3 double crochets. So that's 1, 2, 3. For my last stitch, I'll leave it unfinished. I'll put aside that original color, and I'll pick up the tail end of that first stitch pattern that I'm working with. I'll bring it through, thread it through so that it completes the stitch. Into the next 5 stitches, work 5 double crochets with the change of color. So here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I'll leave that unfinished. I'll bring in all my tail ends on the wrong side. I'll pick up on my original color to complete the stitch. Into the next 3 stitches, work 3 double crochets. 1, 2, 3. I'll leave the last stitch unfinished. I'll pick up on my next change of color, and I'll complete that stitch. Into the next 5 stitches, work 5 double crochets. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. I'll leave that unfinished. I'll go back, pick up on my original color, bring it through to complete the stitch. Into the next 3 stitches, work 3 double crochets. 1, 2, 3. I'll leave the last stitch unfinished. I'll go into my next change of color. I'll pick up on that to complete the stitch. Into the next 5 stitches, work 5 double crochets. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Leave the last stitch unfinished, and then I'll change my color. So the stitch pattern for this round is 3 double crochets in between the polka dot pattern in the original color, and 5 double crochets with my change of color. So you will repeat that until you get to the end, and you'll have 4 stitches remaining. 1, 2, 3, 4, just as we had started off with the 4 stitches. So then I'll pick up on my original color, thread it through to complete the stitch, and into those last 4 stitches I'll work 4 double crochets to complete the round. 2, 3, and 4. Round 5, chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and turn. Into the next 4 stitches, work 4 double crochets. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, and then I'll go back, pick up on my change of color from behind, and thread it through to complete the stitch. Into the next 3 stitches, work 3 double crochets. 1, 2, 3. I'll leave it unfinished, pick up on my original color from behind, thread it through to complete the stitch. Into the next 5 stitches, work 5 double crochets. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I'll leave the last stitch unfinished, go back into that next change of color, pick up on that, pull it through to complete the stitch. Into the next 3 stitches, work 3 double crochets. 1, 2, 3. I'll leave it unfinished, go back, pick up on my original color, thread it through to complete the stitch. Into the next 5 stitches, work 5 double crochets. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'll leave it unfinished, go back, pick up on my next change of color, bring it through to complete the stitch. Into the next 3 stitches, work 3 double crochets. So that's 1, 2, 3. I'll leave my last stitch unfinished, go back, pick up on the original color and thread it through. Now at this point, the stitch pattern is 5 double crochets in the original color and 3 double crochets with the change of yarn. So you'll continue with that pattern until you come to the end where you have 5 stitches remaining. Into those 5 stitches, I'll work 5 double crochets. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Round 6, chain 3, 1, 2, 3. Now round 6, round 7 and round 8 is the same. It's chain 3, turn, work double crochets all across in the original color. 1. So right through you're working double crochets to the end of the round. So for those 3 rounds, you've completed 1 set of the polka dots throughout. And you may find that it may look a bit squished or so, but you'll just have to stretch it out to bring it into the right pattern, or its right form, should I say. So that's it. So you'll continue from there. I've continued on and I've worked round 6, round 7, round 8, which was just chain 3, turn, double crochet all stitches. Round 9, chain 3, 1, 2, 3 and turn. So now here we'll be working our polka dots in between these, our first set of polka dots. So that means I'll have a polka dot up here and I'll have one up there. Into the next 8 stitches, double crochet. 1, 2, 3, 4, oops, 5, 6, 7, 8. I'll leave that last stitch unfinished and I'll bring in my next change of color. So again, form that loop, bring it in, all ponytail tail ends at the back on the wrong side. Into the next 3 stitches, work 3 double crochets. 1, 2, 3. Leave that last stitch unfinished, bring back your original. Into the next 5 stitches, work 5 double crochets. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Leave it unfinished. Bring in your next change of color. It's always easy to have those lengths of yarn ready. Into the next 3 stitches, work 3 double crochets. 1, 2, 3. Change of color, change back to your original, bring it in to complete the stitch. Into the next 9 stitches, work 9 double crochets. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. Now remember that these 9 stitches are when you come to the end of your round. Obviously your rounds are going to be much longer. So the stitch pattern is 5 double crochets in the original color and 3 in the change of color, and then you'll end it off with 9 stitches into 9 double crochets into the 9 remaining stitches. Round 10, chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and turn. Into the next 7 stitches, work 7 double crochets. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I'll leave that unfinished. I'll pick up on that first change of color and I'll thread it through to complete the stitch. Into the next 5 stitches, work 5 double crochets. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'll leave the last stitch unfinished, go back to my original, bring it through to complete the stitch. Into the next 3 stitches, work 3 double crochets. So that's 1, 2, 3. Change my color to that next stitch, change of yarn, pick up on that to complete the stitch. Into the next 5 stitches, work 5 double crochets. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Leave that unfinished. So that's my stitch pattern. It's 3 double crochets in the original color and 5 in the change of color. And then when you get to the end, it's 8 stitches, 8 double crochets into the remaining 8 stitches. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Round 11. Chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and turn. Into the next 8 stitches, work 8 double crochets. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I'll leave that unfinished. I'll pick up on my change of color, complete the stitch. Into the next 3 stitches, work 3 double crochets. So that's 1, 2, 3. I'll leave the last stitch unfinished, go back, pick up on my original color to complete the stitch. Into the next 5 stitches, work 5 double crochets. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'll leave that unfinished, go back to my change of color, pick up on that length of yarn, complete the stitch. Into the next 3 stitches, work 3 double crochets. 1, 2, 3. I'll leave that unfinished. So that is the pattern for round 11. It's 5 double crochets in the original color and 3 in the change of color. Now when you get to the end, it's you'll work 9 double crochets into the remaining 9 stitches. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So that's basically the pattern that you'll be working. And now you will repeat round 3 to round 11, and you'll end with 2 rounds of double crochet, but I'll show you that in the next clip. So I've completed the pattern, the back panel, and all I've done was repeat round 3 to round 11 until I reach a width that is my shoulder to shoulder measurement plus 2 inches. Now I'm making a size medium, so the shoulder to shoulder measurement is 16 inches, and I added on 2 inches, so that's 18 inches. Now as I work the pattern, I noticed that here I came all the way, and in order for me to get that measurement, I needed to work a few rounds of double crochet, and that's how you would go about adjusting your pattern. You will not work an additional pattern that involves the polka dot if you cannot complete the full polka dot. So instead of working that pattern, you work double crochets until you get to your measurement. But you also need to take into consideration, or keep in mind rather, that the ending must be uniform or look the same as the start. Now here, I'm actually missing about an inch from my shoulder to shoulder measurement plus 2 inches. I've worked 1, 2, 3 rounds of double crochet, and then I'll go back to that start where I've worked. I started off with 2 rounds of double crochet, and here I'll continue on. I'll just attach my yarn and I'll work a further round of double crochet. That will bring my measurement to the shoulder to shoulder measurement plus 2 inches. So here I'm attaching the yarn to my piece, and it's a chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and I'll work a round of double crochets just to make my back panel uniform on either side. You can go slightly over that shoulder to shoulder plus 2 inches measurement, but preferably not under that measurement. So I'll work on this off camera and I'll get back to you once I'm done. I've worked the 3 rounds of 3 double crochet on either side of my back panel, as you see, just to get it uniform on either side. So I hope that explains how you would go about adjusting your back panel when it comes to the width of the panel. Remember, on this side is the width, and where we had worked that chain, that initial chain, that would be the length of the panel. I then fastened off and preferably cut off long enough tail to help with the seaming. I've continued on with the front panel, and all I've done here is repeat round 3 to round 11 until the width of my panel measures half the shoulder to shoulder measurement. Now the shoulder to shoulder measurement for my size is 16 inches, and when I measure my front panel, the width of my front panel, it measures 8 inches. Now, for the front panel, unlike the back panel, you don't have to worry about the uniformity of the double crochets at the start with the double crochets, the number of rounds that you're working at the end, because even though you've started off with 2 rounds of double crochet, you can end with more rounds of double crochet. That really doesn't matter. The important part is that whatever you do to the left panel is the same as what you do to the right panel. And obviously that the width of your panel measures the shoulder, half the shoulder to shoulder measurement. Now I've already gone ahead and worked a second panel, and this is the same as my first panel. So far we've completed the back panel and we've completed 2 front panels. Now we'll move on to the sleeve. We'll now work the sleeve. Now for the sleeve, okay, we'll start off with that slip knot, and then we'll chain a length of chains. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Now you'll continue on with this length of chains until your chain measures the arm length. So I've given you the measurement in the clip before. Now I've continued on with this chain for my sleeve, and to measure it, My chain measures the arm length for my size, and I've given you those measurements in the clip to follow. At this point, once you get that chain to the right length, you can go ahead and count the number of chains that you have. In my case, I have 53 chains. Now you need to adjust this chain to a multiple of 8 plus 7. So for me, I needed to add on 2 more chains to bring it to 55 chains, and that would be a multiple of 8 plus 7. You'll adjust that chain to multiples of 8 plus 7, and then you'll go ahead and repeat rounds 1 to 11, just as you had done for the back panel, and then you'll repeat round 3 to 11 until you reach the armhole depth times 2. So the width of your sleeve needs to be the armhole depth times 2, or twice the armhole depth. And again, I've given the measurements in the next clip. I've continued on with the sleeve, and again, like the back panel and the front panels, I've repeated rounds 3 to round 11 until I reach a width that measures my armhole depth times 2. So this is twice the armhole depth. Again, I've adjusted on either side of my sleeve, just as I had done for the front and back panels, working those rounds of double crochet in order to get it to the armhole depth times 2. Now, the armhole depth that I was working towards was 7 inches. So my panel, the width of my panel, measures 14 inches. And I've also worked 2 of these. You can now set this aside, and the next step is to assemble them all together. Now that we've completed all our panels, we'll go ahead and assemble the cardigan. So here I have the back panel facing, right side facing up, and on top of that or above that, I'll place my front panel, the right side facing in and the wrong side facing up. So here, or out should I say, I'll just align it to the edge of the back panel, and with my yarn needle I'll go ahead and I'll seam along this top edge to bring the shoulders together. Well, there's no actual stitches to work with here. You'll just go ahead and seam along, bringing both panels together and keeping your stitches even. So I'll continue with the remaining off camera. Once I've done with that, I'll place my next panel on the opposite side of my back panel, aligning those edges along the side and the top edge, and then I'll seam together the top edges for my shoulder, and you'll notice that there is a little gap between the two panels here, and that becomes the front opening of the cardigan. So there's just one thing that I must bring to your attention when you're seaming up the shoulders of the front and back panel. If you've worked your front panel like I have done, where I started off with the 2 rounds of double crochet, but eventually had to end off with 3 rounds in order to bring up my width of the panel. Make sure that when you do assemble your front panels on top of the back panel, make sure that you've got them looking uniform again. Like here along the edge, I've placed my panel so that I have 2 rounds of double crochet, and towards the center it's the 3 rounds. And then with my second panel, I've done the same, bringing the 3 rounds to the center, and right at the edge I left my 2 rounds of double crochet. So that just helps it make the cardigan look uniform. I hope that all makes sense. It's always difficult for me to explain, but yeah, I hope it makes sense. Now that we have our back panel and our front panels joined at the shoulders, we can go ahead and fit on the sleeves. So for the sleeve, you take your panel and you fold it in half along the width of the panel, with the right side facing up. Here I have the right side facing up and my wrong side facing in. And I'll take that folded edge of my sleeve and place it along the seam that we formed at the shoulders of my front and back panel. So I'll align that with the seam. And at that point, I can open up that shoulder, or that sleeve panel. And I have my placement of my sleeve. So you can go ahead and seam the sleeve to the front and back panel. And you continue on until you reach the end of the sleeve. You will do the same for the sleeve on the other side as well. Now that we've joined the sleeves to the front and back panels, we'll be adding pockets. And to do that, you need to decide on the placement of your pocket. Now, I find that the best placement, or maybe for me, would be just at the point where my hip starts. So it's in between the waist and the hip. And for me, that works out. When I measured myself from the underarm going downwards, that measures 10 inches. And here I have the sleeve of my cardigan, and here's the front panel and back panel going downwards. So if I measure from the underarm downwards, and I measure the 10 inches, and I can mark it off with a stitch marker, and I've marked both layers, and I've done the same on the other side as well. Now for the next measurement with regard to the pocket, you need to find that opening of the pocket, and in order to do so, you need to know the width of the palm or hand. And for me, that's like I've measured like so, and it's 4 inches. So from that stitch marker that we've just marked off, working downwards, it's 4 inches, and I'll place my second stitch marker. Like I said, I've done that on both the layers, and I've done it on the other side as well. So here it is on the other side. So this becomes the opening for the pocket. Now we can go ahead and seam our panels together, and we'll seam from the bottom to that stitch marker here, and we'll seam from the sleeve, the edge of the sleeve on the one side, all the way to the underarm, going down the underarm, coming around and stopping at those first stitch markers. So we have this portion of our cardigan left unstitched. I've gone ahead and stitched along the edges, sides of the cardigan, and along the sleeves of the cardigan. So I've left the pocket openings unstitched. And I've also, when I stitched the edges of the cardigan together, I made certain that my right sides were facing in, and here's my wrong sides facing out. So now that we've done and our cardigan has come together, I think that the most logical thing, well, for me anyway, before moving on, is to neaten up this cardigan, because at the moment the wrong side looks like a royal mess. So when you're weaving in all those ends or neatening up on your cardigan, you work on the wrong side, and all you gotta do is, so you take the color that you're working with, and you weave in those ends, that color, into that particular color that you're working with. Like, you cannot go and weave in this color into another color like so. So just stick to the same color when weaving in. So the thing is just to go in and out the stitches in opposite directions preferably. So here I go in the opposite direction, in and out through those stitches, and I'll pull it through, and that tail end you can just trim it off. And you'll do this with, well, there's a lot to be done, so you'll do this with all your tail ends, and then we can move on. I've continued on and I've neatened up on all those tail ends. We'll now go ahead and work those pockets. Now I've already worked the pocket on one side, and that's just to give you an idea of how to form this pocket. You look at it here, here's the edge, the opening of that pocket, and here is the pocket. Now for these pockets that are along the side of the cardigan, the way that you put your hand into the pocket, you never put it in straight like so. It's always at an angle. So we've got to form that pocket at an angle as well. And if you look at the pocket, the way that I've formed it, it isn't straight. If it were straight, it would be like so. But the pocket is formed at a slight angle, so you're able to fit in your hand comfortably. I'll now show you how to form those pockets. So here I am at the pocket on the other side. Now this is the wrong side of the cardigan, and I've inserted my hook into one of the stitches along that pocket opening. Notice that I haven't inserted the hook along this edges here on the seam. I've rather chosen along the center of that pocket here. So I've inserted the hook into the front loop of my stitch. Now if you look at the stitch again, you have two loops that make up the stitch, and the stitch that's the loop that's further away from you is the back loop, and the loop that is closer to you is the front loop, and I've inserted my hook into that front loop. We'll be forming our stitches into the front loops only for the first round of the pocket. Now to get the pocket to form that angle that I spoke about earlier, we need to decrease and increase, and we'll work our increases. If you look at the pocket, on the one side of the pocket is the top of the cardigan, and this here, if it go further on, it runs to the underarm. And on the other side of the pocket is the bottom edge of the cardigan. This is where the cardigan ends. So along the bottom edge of this pocket is where we'll work all our increases, and on the top edge of the pocket right here, that's where we work all our decreases, and that will cause the pocket to sort of decrease on this side and increase on this side, forming that slant that we're looking for with the pocket. Okay, here goes round 1. Attach yarn to the pocket, into the front loop, chain 3, 1, 2, 3, into all stitches around the pocket. Work double crochets into the front loops only. When you get to this edge of that pocket, you'll work a decrease, and when you get to that edge of the pocket, you'll work on an increase. So it's just those front loops that I'm working into. You may need to help your hook through the stitch. Okay, you can remove your stitch markers. You no longer need them. I think that makes it a lot easier. So here I am at the first edge, and now this is the top edge. Make sure that you're always working the decreases along that top edge. And I said that that seam, if you go further on, it runs towards the underarm. So for a decrease, you're working 1 stitch into 2 stitches. So it's yarn over, insert the hook into that first stitch, the front loop only, pull up a loop, insert your hook into that next stitch, the front loop only, pull up a loop, yarn over, go through 3 loops on the hook, yarn over, go through 2 loops on the hook, and then you continue with double crochets to the next edge right here. So I've worked my way to that bottom edge of the pocket, and here you see the bottom of the cardigan, and here I am. Into that stitch, I'll work an increase. An increase is working 2 stitches into 1. So here I have 2 double crochets worked into 1 stitch. And then you continue on with double crochets to the end of the round. I've continued on with the pocket, and in total I've worked 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 rounds, and that gave me the correct depth that I'm looking for my pocket. So you'll work as many rounds as need be in order to get the right depth of pocket. And it's just chain 3, double crochet to the top edge, then it's decrease, then it's double crochet to the bottom edge and increase, double crochet to the end, slip stitch to join. So for the last round of the pocket, it's chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and here we're working decreases all around the pocket. So it's yarn over, insert your hook into the first stitch, pull up a loop, insert your hook into the next stitch, pull up a loop, yarn over, go through 3 loops on the hook, yarn over, go through 2 loops on the hook, and you'll continue with decreases to the end of the round. I've worked my way to the end of the last round and I've just got one stitch remaining. So into that stitch I'll work a double crochet, and then it's into that third chain from chain 3 I will slip stitch to join. Now I can fasten off, leaving behind a long enough tail to help with the seaming. Using your yarn needle, you can go ahead and seam together that bottom end of the pocket. Okay, so you can now fasten off, and there you have it, your pocket's all done. Here it is. Here's the opening to the pocket, and here's the pocket on the wrong side. That completes the pocket, so you work the pocket on the other side. Now before we work the edging to the front opening and bottom of the cardigan, I decided to form a little V along the front opening of my cardigan, and you'll see it here. I've worked it already on one side. So here's the neckline, and here coming down, and it just curves slightly to form a V. Now to do that, I will show you how to do it, although it is optional. Decide how deep you'd like the V by taking your measuring tape from your shoulder downwards. Now I went ahead and used a measurement of 8 inches to mark off my neckline. So it's from the top edge going downwards, and here I've placed my first stitch marker, and on the other side of the front opening I've done the same. So I went ahead and physically measured myself and decided how deep I'd like that V, and for me it was 8 inches. You can go ahead and make it deeper or less. It all depends on what you are looking for. So once you've got that marked off, you can go ahead, attach yarn to the bottom edge of the front opening of the cardigan on one side. Then it's chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and into the all stitches to that stitch marker, work double crochets. You will, however, stop 3 stitches before that stitch marker. So you'll continue with double crochets to 3 stitches before the stitch marker. I've continued on. Here I am, 3 stitches before the stitch marker. Into the next stitch, work a half double crochet. So it's yarn over, insert the hook into the next stitch, pull up a loop, yarn over, go through all 3 loops on the hook. Into the next stitch, work a single crochet. So it's insert the hook into that next stitch, pull up a loop, yarn over, go through 2 loops on the hook. Into the last stitch, work a slip stitch. So insert your hook into that stitch, pull up a loop, take that same loop and pull it through the loop on your hook. Round 2, turn. You can move the yarn, the tail end of your yarn, on the next side behind the hook into that next stitch. So not the one from where this loop on your hook comes out of. Into that next stitch, work a slip stitch. into the next stitch a slip stitch, into the next stitch a single crochet, into the next stitch a half double crochet, and then you'll continue on with double crochets to the end of the round. You can then fasten off and cut off the excess yarn. So I've completed that adjustment to the front opening of my cardigan on both sides, and I fastened off. We'll now work the edging along the bottom of the cardigan. So on the one side of the bottom edge of the cardigan, you can attach yarn. Here you will use a smaller hook, so you will go down a size. At the moment I'm using a 5.5 millimeter hook, so I'll drop down to a 4.5 millimeter hook. Attach yarn to that edge. Then it's chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and here we'll be working double crochets for our first round all across that bottom edge of the cardigan. So here you're working your double crochets. It's 2 double crochets per row of lengthwise double crochets. So here if you look at the stitch, I've worked along this line here. I can work 1 double crochet, and into that space I'll work another. So 1 along that line that's formed from my row of double crochets, and another into that space. So if we look at the next one, I'll work 1 here and the other there. So it's 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, and you'll continue to the end of the round. I've continued on working those double crochets all across the bottom edge. So for the next round, it's chain 3, round 2, chain 3, and turn. For this round, we'll be working 2 front post double crochets followed by 2 back post double crochets. So to work a front post double crochet, it's yarn over, insert the hook into the post of the stitch. Now if you look at the stitch, this is the post of the stitch. So you'll insert the hook into that post of the stitch, pull up a loop, go through that post, yarn over, go through 2 loops on the hook, yarn over, go through 2 loops on the hook. So that was our first front post double crochet. So into the next stitch we'll work another front post double crochet, now we've completed 2 front post double crochets. So into the next 2 stitches we'll work 2 back post double crochets. So here it's yarn over, insert the hook into the post of the stitch, but this time you're going from behind. Pull up a loop, yarn over, go through 2 loops on the hook, yarn over, go through 2 loops on the hook. That was the first back post double crochet, and for the second, so you'll continue on throughout this round working 2 front post double crochets followed by 2 back post double crochets all the way to the end of the round. I've continued on and I've completed round 2 of the edging. Round 3, chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and turn. So now we'll continue on with that same stitch pattern, working the front post double crochets times 2 followed by the back post double crochets. But I need you to know that wherever you see the stitches, the posts of those stitches coming forward, that's where you would work a front post double crochet, and where you see it's the stitches sort of going down and you're able to see them right at the back, that's where you'd work back post double crochets. You need to follow that pattern. So like here, I'll work a front post double crochet and then a front post double crochet, and then my stitches sort of go down here, and I see them at the back. That's where I'll work up back post double crochet and a back post double crochet. So that's the pattern sequence for round 3. So you continue to the end of the round. So I've continued on with the bottom edging, and I've worked 6 rounds in total. The first round was the round of double crochets, and then round 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 were rounds of front post double crochets times 2, followed by back post double crochet times 2. I then fastened off. I then reattached my yarn to the front opening of the cardigan, and I repeated the round 1 to round 4 of that bottom edging, where round 1 was the round of double crochets along the front opening of the cardigan, and then the round 2 was front post double crochet times 2 followed by back post double crochet times 2, and I worked that round 3 times. So it was, I've completed round 1, round 2, round 3, and round 4. And now at this point in the next clip, you'll see how I have assembled or laid out my buttons and figured out where my buttonholes are going to be. Now in the previous clip, you've seen how I had laid out my buttons and figured out my buttonholes. So here you see I've got all my stitch markers in place, showing me where my buttonholes are going to be. And on the opposite side of the front panels, that's where my buttons will be. So to find the placement of the buttons, it's difficult for me to show you here because this cardigan is rather big, but I will just give you an idea. You need to first of all place your buttons along the one side of the front opening and space them out evenly as you would like them. And on the opposite side, in line with that button, you place a stitch marker. So that stitch marker will mark the buttonhole. You can remove that, and right at the end, we'll stitch on our buttons. Okay, so now I'm at round 5 of my edging along the front opening. So I've after round 4, I chained 3, turned, worked front post double crochet times 2 followed by back post double crochet times 2 all around, and here I am at that first stitch marker marking off my buttonhole. So at that stitch I will chain, I've worked my in my case it was a back post double crochet, and then it's a chain 1, and I'll skip the stitch where marked off by that stitch marker, and I'll continue with my stitch pattern into the next stitch. So here you see I have a little hole that's formed, and then I'll continue on with my stitch pattern, the front post double crochet or back post double crochet, however your pattern may be. So I'm just continuing on to the next buttonhole. Here I am at the next stitch marker. I'll chain 1, I'll skip that stitch marked off by the stitch marker, and into the next stitch I'll continue with my stitch pattern. And so on, you'll work your front post double crochets followed by your back post double crochets to the next stitch marker, where you'll chain 1, skip that stitch, and continue on to the end of the round. So I've continued on completing round 5 of the edging, and here you see I formed that buttonhole. I then went on to chain 3, turn, and I've continued on with my stitch pattern. Here I am at that chain 1. So you'll see that I've worked my one of the stitches here. In my case it was a back post double crochet, and then I'm missing one. Instead of that next back post double crochet, I worked the chain 1, and then I continued with my stitch pattern. So into that chain 1 I'll work a double crochet, and then I'll continue on with my stitch pattern as normal, working that front post double crochet or back post double crochet depending on what's my next stitch. And wherever there's a chain 1, I will work a double crochet into that space. So you work the stitch pattern to the end of the round. You can then fasten off and cut off the excess yarn. I've sewn on my buttons using your normal sewing thread and needle. The important thing here is to make certain that your button and the buttonholes all align. Now for the sleeve, the edging at the bottom of the sleeve, I've worked 1 round of double crochet along that bottom edge, and then it was a round of front post double crochet times 2, followed by back post double crochet times 2. I fastened off, cut off the excess yarn, repeat for the other sleeve, and then all that's left to do is to weave in all those ends. And there you have it. Thank you for watching.